helping educate you and give you our support in getting the tyrants off your back, especially the IRS, but not limited to the IRS. And so these people get we provide our freedom packages to do so. And, for some of you, to put $6,000 on the floor and support us every year with a couple $1,000, some people might bite at that. Say, no, that's too much. But these people did that, and I know they did that, not because we're going to be there to protect and defend them from the thieves and criminals that we try to do our best to do. But they also do it because they believe in freedom. They believe in the restoration of freedom and justice. They believe in supporting people like our heroes that we've been supporting by doing all this. They believe in getting this information out to a much larger group of Americans to really leave a legacy of freedom for our children and grandchildren. So at this point, I'd like to ask any Royal and Simple Freedom Package members we have in this audience to please stand up. Folks, please stand up. Anybody who's a Royal or Simple Freedom Package member who helped us out put these events together. And please give them a warm hand of thank you, because you were the ones that really, helped us put these events together. Yeah. Thank you for supporting us and allowing us to, share all this with you. Is the tape ready to go again?
Yep.
For the next speaker?
We're rolling.
Okay. The next person I'd like to recognize is someone that I heard years ago as a good singer. Sings nicely. And he's married to a captain in the military who's now exposing government corruption. But I had a chance to meet him in person in Washington, D.C. at one of the We the People events that we trekked down there to deliver material to our congressmen, senators. Had a chance to meet him, and I was very impressed that he's a lot more than singer than I was told. He's very good at public speaking. He's very good at putting on a good production. A movie producer, documentary producer. He's a great radio show host. And I was very impressed when I was on the program that him and his wife has got a first-class radio program that really puts out the truth to the American people on a regular basis. And I've had the pleasure now to meet him again and get to know him more. And Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tenacious quest to disseminate the truth, expose government corruption, and restore liberty for all, including but not limited to the 9/11 tragedy, recognizes you, Robert David Von Kleist, as a voice of freedom. Come on up.
Thank you. And thank you. I'm really honored to be honored. Was not expecting to be honored, but it's really an honor. I want to emphasize and echo what one of the previous recipients said. It's not me. It's not Joyce. It's all of you. It's the team. It's the giving that folks like us have. Because we're not doing it for us. I mean, as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. And for those of you that have been following Joyce and me for the past 10 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the point here is that it's the spirit that everybody understands that we all have a job to do. And it doesn't make any difference if Joyce and I are on this end of the microphone and you're on that end of the speaker. It doesn't make any difference. We're all doing the same thing, just in different ways and at different levels. And I want to give credit where credit is due. If it weren't for the listeners to the Power Hour, there wouldn't have been a 9/11 in plain sight. I mean, think about it. The only reason we ended up with all that footage is because everybody pitched in. It was a team effort. And that's the type of spirit and the type of effort it's going to take for us to be able to pull this thing out of the fire. And I think you all will agree that if you become aware of a lie and you do nothing to expose the lie, you then become part of the lie. And none of us wants to live a lie. So, Payman, I want to thank you, and more importantly, I want to thank you because it's going to be up to you folks, you people, as Ross Perot said, to keep the torch burning bright. And just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And please join us in the spirit. Like I said at the end of the program this morning, I'll say it again right now, and you know what I'm talking about. We end the program every single day, and hopefully you understand the spirit behind it. When Joyce and I, at the very close of the program, we say, stand up, stretch the legs, take a deep breath, and scream from the top of your lungs and the bottoms of your soul. Say it with me now. We will not stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Okay, folks, I'm told that the 76.3 sub SUV Nevada plate is still there, so if the person, take care of. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next person I would like to recognize, and we only got a few more left, folks. Not a whole lot more. We're going to be done and get your. I know you're waiting for Joe Banister to come up. I'll get him up for you shortly. Promise. Okay, but you got to give people the recognition too. This person I had a pleasure meeting first time was about 11 years ago, and he was at a Free Enterprise Society convention just like this. In fact, it was a good one. It had close to 400 people. That's the biggest one I've been to that they had in San Francisco, San Jose area. And I met this guy for the first time. And this lawyer that I'm told, this guy is very sharp, Payman. You better listen to him. Well, I go talk to him, and we talk a little bit, but didn't have a chance to really get to know him that much because he didn't know me from Adam. I'm just another guy, trying to pick his brain, I mean, that's, whenever I figure one way you learn is when you come across a smarter guy than you just go around him and just let him talk, right? Everything he says is going to be a good addition of you, right? But I got his book to read. Then I saw him about a year later at another meeting, and this time he recognized me, and we had a chance to have lunch. And this time he gave me more piece of his mind. He probably thought, no, this guy won't listen to me. He's just, another one of those guys who's idealistic, has no practicality, no realism to his thought. And but I listened to a lot of what he had to say, and I remember that. And unfortunately, didn't have a pleasure of meeting him again for many, many years later. In fact, when I approached him many years later, he wasn't quite sure if he wanted to really talk to me because he wasn't sure really who I was. But I thought, so it's okay. I don't take things personally. Good friends go through thick and thin. And this guy was such a successful lawyer at being the IRS in criminal tax trials again and again and again that U.S. Department of Justice lawyers, whenever he showed up to the court, they started asking the court not to allow him to defend people. Think about that. Oh, he's got too good of a lawyer. He'll kick our butt. We can't let this guy represent people. And they even try to disbar him, not let him represent people at all. We're going to ruin this guy because he's standing up for truth and justice, exposing government corruption. He's such a talent. We got to get rid of this guy. Do whatever it takes. And folks, let me tell you, when they mess with your livelihood, after many years being a successful attorney, well, after all that, it takes an emotional toll on you, because, what else are you going to do? You start all over doing something else. It is difficult to go through challenges, but he was a very thick-skinned guy, okay? And he went through all that thick and thin and came back. And he's doing a marvelous job, once again, shining as a freedom attorney. And I had the pleasure of actually watch him in action. It was like watching a beautiful ballet being presented, executed, because this guy's done it. He always does his homework so well, so prepared, knows the subject so well. He was teaching the lawyer the other side and the judge about the law. And at one point, at least I remember, the judge told the government prosecutor in the Joe Banister trial that the government prosecutor would do good if he were to listen to him, teach him some law, and use some of his jury instructions, as what to tell the jury. Because I tell you, I never heard of a case in a criminal tax case that the government doesn't use the government's version of the jury instructions to start with. But he was so good, the judge said, I'm going to start with his. And so, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your lifetime commitment and dedication to bring forth justice and government accountability, and in defending freedom for all Americans, recognizes you, Jeffrey Dickstein, as freedom attorney of the 20th century. Let's give him a hand. He gave us the Joe Banister victory, folks. Jeff Dickstein was a lead lawyer.
I remember in kindergarten on the second day of the semester being pulled in front of the principal because I thought the teacher was stupid and told her. But things haven't changed much. I've been blessed because over the years I've been able to stand beside and a little bit in front of some really great people that have done some really great things. Irwin Schiff, Franklin Sanders, Fred Allnut, Joe Banister. It's just been an honor and a privilege to represent these people. And it's just been a real honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you again, Jeff. And welcome back, Jeff. We hope to see a lot more Jeff from the Freedom Movement, folks. Again, the fighting lion, tiger is back. The next gentleman I'd like to recognize, I met for the first time yesterday. And he's a very busy man these days. He's been traveling across the world. And he's been recognized as a national hero by the U.S. government. Why? Because this man was the last man out of the World Trade Center, Twin Towers, saved so many scores of lives personally, and indirectly helped the firefighters through his knowledge of the trade centers to help save a lot more people's lives. And after being a national hero, after the President Clinton and President Bush and Hillary Clinton, sorry, and all of these criminals who act like they were defending the Constitution and rights took picture with him to say, oh, see, we're for the national hero, the guy that really makes a difference. They recognize him. They've started since then shunning him because he's standing up for the truth. He's standing up for real justice. He's standing for real justice in such a strong way that he's willing to sue the man who heads up the largest corporation, the largest empire that ever existed in the world, President George Bush, personally, to expose what really happened in 9/11/2001, that tragic day. And folks, it takes a lot of guts to do that. And the government officials and the media lapdog of the banks and corporations who control the media, they don't want to talk to him. They don't want to hear the truth that he has to say of what really happened. And you're going to hear from him firsthand tomorrow in detail. However, we want to recognize him for his great courage tonight. Freedom Law School, in recognition of your bold stance against government lies and their cover-up of the 9/11 tragedy, and your courage to expose the truth and to bring justice, recognizes you, William Rodriguez, as a hero of freedom and justice.
I feel like a coffee cake when they put the syrup on top. It's a surprise. I didn't expect this. Like you said, I've been so busy traveling all over the world trying to tell the truth. It's incredible that in Europe, South America, the Caribbean, everywhere I go, I have an open door policy. I meet with the president of every country practically. The media covers everything without any kind of editing. But here, like he said, they made me national hero. Been at the White House many times. I was trained, I was sent to the Governing Institute in New Jersey to train for politics. I was being part of the system. I always talk about that I had a room full of plaques, certificates, recognitions from all the places that I went. But this one is going to be very special because not even at the White House, in Congress, when I went there with 4 other people to ask for the 9/11 Commission to be created, I never met so many patriots like I do now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Folks, just so you know, we only bring speakers here that are worthy of recognition. So we have a tradition of recognizing all of our speakers at these conferences for the great work that they've been doing. And so many other individuals that you think that we should recognize that we didn't, believe me, they've been recognized previous times. We've been doing this conference since 1999. You probably were not at that conference, but that guy got recognized previously like this. And at Freedom Law School, generally we have a traditional policy of we recognize everybody. One time is good enough. There's so many people to recognize. You don't need to do it twice. Okay, for the great works that they do. So we broke that tradition tonight because Urban Schiff was one of the very earliest recipients of our award way back in 1996, before there was these conventions. I had him come and speak to my students, a class of about, I think, 25 people in the restaurant in Tustin we met. And I had Urban come and speak, and he was the first guy to get a recognition plaque of those days. So we recognize Urban again tonight because of the unique circumstances that we felt was necessary and appropriate to recognize him. But now, there is a second such person that we recognized before, and this man was part of the system, part of the government, and he was trying to do the best that he can. He found about lies and corruption that he had a hard time believing at first. But when faced with the facts, faced with the law, that he, on his personal time and money, took the time to research and verify for himself. When he came across the unescapable truth of corruption in the agency he was working with, the Internal Revenue Service, he took the courageous stand of asking the taxing agency of the most powerful empire in the history of the world to stop its widespread corrupt practices. And of course, they didn't answer his questions, and he didn't stop. He traveled to Washington, D.C. from California many, many times by plane and by car, and attempted to get some straight answers from our public servants in Washington, D.C. He took a bold public stance, and the government kept refusing to answer his questions or straighten out their act. So rather than rewarding him for exposing the corruption that was into the governmental system, the IRS, the government decided to reward him by initiating criminal charges against him to shut him up. They couldn't shut him up by intimidating him, by just encouraging him to resign. And because he didn't shut up, they figured, we're going to put you away. And folks, IRS does have a good record of getting its enemies. But this guy was not only a man of conscience, he was intelligent, he's done his homework, he was prepared, and I got to tell you the truth, I got a little confession to make about him. In that when I first charged him, I said, I can't believe they charged him, because I know the IRS made a big mistake. I know him personally. I was with him before he came out from the IRS. We helped publish his report, promote him, get him out there. And I've known him throughout the years. He's done nothing wrong. This cannot be right, and there's no way the government is going to beat him. And you know what? He stood tall, and without ever having to even go testify before the jury at the trial, the jury came back and said not guilty. And you know what? I know some other people who were whistleblowers like this man, and after some pressure, they folded to different degrees. Some of them decided to stop talking about the corruption that they found out because it's getting a little too hot under the collar. Maybe just cool it down for a little bit. But despite all the adversity, this man decided I'm going to come out and keep coming out and talk about the truth, talk about the right thing, and insisting that our government must respond to our questions and give us answers about the income tax issue. And tonight is the first public speech that he's given since his acquittal by a jury of 12 men and women. And Freedom Law School, in recognition of your continued courage and willingness to speak the truth and demand honesty and accountability in government, for your personal sacrifice for the betterment of all Americans, to personally stand in defense of American people's freedoms and inalienable rights, to demand a better America for our children at any cost, recognizes and thanks you, your speaker for the evening. I'll give you Mr. Joseph R. Banister as an American freedom hero for the second time.
Thank you. Well, I have to say, Paymon, I mean, for somebody as dedicated as he is, and, to have been born in another country, I've never been to the Middle East. I've only been to New York once. I haven't traveled that much, but I mean, to have someone like Paymon to be as dedicated as he is to freedom, I'd be a real pretty poor American if I couldn't at least go after it as much as Paymon does. So I think we need to recognize Paymon. I'll figure this. Okay. If you think it, let me just see. Maybe I'll test. We just got to do a little test here. This ain't gonna work because I can't see it. Can you hear me all right in the back? All right. Technology's working. All right. Normally, I don't really take many notes, but I'm kind of nervous. As Paymon says, I don't think I've spoken since my acquittal. But he also has me on kind of a time frame, limited time frame. Plus, I really want to save some time for Bob Bernhoft to say a few words, and maybe even Jeff Dickstein. So I'm going to kind of watch the clock here. And Paymon also asked me to, kind of go into details that every year I kind of wonder, gosh, people, I mean, it's already 10 o'clock, right? We got to hear about Joe's childhood. Joe's childhood, and all this stuff. But he asked me to just kind of give it, because a lot of people may not know, and maybe people that hear about it in the future. But I was thinking I could title, if I ever did write a book, I could entitle it Favored Federal Agent to Enemy of the State in 2 years flat. But anyway, as far as a little background on me, had a middle-class upbringing in San Jose, California, north where it's snowing. And I had a childhood that was very enjoyable, relatively uneventful. Born and raised a Roman Catholic, attended Catholic schools, a Catholic elementary school, Catholic high school. I don't have any horror stories, at least that I want to share with you. But my schooling and my upbringing of my parents did put into me a strong moral foundation. What can I say? I mean, you don't learn how strong that moral foundation is until your life progresses. And so as my life progressed, I discovered more and more about how strong those foundations were. The high school that I went to is called Bellarmine College Preparatory. It's up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they've got a motto there. And it's an all-boys school. So the motto is to be a man for others. And unfortunately, I don't think maybe the alums of that school adhere to that motto as much as they should. But for some strange reason, that motto really struck a chord with me. And I tried very hard to remember it and live by it. And in fact, when I used to, I shouldn't say used to, I still pray at night, but when I'd pray at night after I graduated from high school, I would ask God to make me aware or not let me forget about the needs of others, and to not be just concerned about Joe, and that be it. To actually be aware of what's going on out there, what other people's troubles are. And in my mind, I thought, well, that might mean I might meet a homeless person on the street, give him a buck, give him my jacket, something like that. And I found out later that God had a little different plan. After high school, I went to college. I went to San Jose State University and earned a bachelor's degree in accounting way back in 1986. Went on to pursue a CPA certificate, Certified Public Accountant. I received that in 1991, and worked in the private sector for a number of years. And then in the early 90s, I just had this incredible urge to seek a position in law enforcement of some type. I really didn't know what, but I really had a choice of either uniform type law enforcement, like the guys that pull you over and give you tickets, or more of an investigative role. And given that I had the accounting background, I decided that maybe the investigative role might be a little better suited to my background. So I had a friend at church, and his name was Robert, still is, Robert Guarini. And remember that name because it will manifest itself again further into my story. And Mr. Greeny suggested, he was actually at the time a supervisory special agent in the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. And at that time I was just a CPA looking to get a little more excitement in my life. So he suggested that I apply to both the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division because, as he said, you never know when these agencies are going to be hiring. You never know where you might end up, so don't put your eggs all in one basket. So I applied to both agencies, and interestingly, the FBI acted upon my application very quickly. Within 2 weeks, I received confirmation that my application had been received, and they were scheduling me for some written testing to occur up in San Francisco, about 50 miles north of San Jose. That was for you, Bob, because California geography is... So anyway, I went through all these tests with the FBI, and I was really excited about it because, as you all know, the FBI has TV shows about it, right? Exciting TV shows, and people, think, "Wow, what would it be to be like an FBI agent?" And but I don't remember ever seeing any IRS shows. I guess there was Elliot Ness, but I don't remember them really touting the fact that he was Treasury, IRS. They basically always say Treasury. So, needless to say, the FBI calling me first and the IRS not calling me at all was just fine with me. So I progressed through the FBI application process, and again, I was just getting more and more excited at every stage because they wouldn't tell you how you were doing. They would just tell you that if you make it to the next stage, it means that the previous stage you did good, you passed. So I just thought, wow, I'm on a real rocket ride here. I'm going to end up in Quantico, Virginia before I know it. And then, typical for the government, they had arguments back there in D.C. and had a hiring freeze was instituted because of budgetary concerns. And this was just about the time that I had gone through all the, testing and medical testing and background investigations and driving my wife crazy with this holding pattern, trying to get into this law enforcement position. And the hiring freeze came, and it just came to a complete halt. And it was just so very disappointing. I did not like those days at all. That was basically 1991, 1992, and then most of 1993. And it was in August of 1993 when I was pretty much thinking I was going to kind of give up hope. Federal law enforcement would ever knock on my door. I got a call from the San Francisco office of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. And for those of you that don't know, actually the IRS keeps morphing. It keeps changing. It's hard to keep track of all their divisions and departments. But when I was there, they had three big divisions. The examination division, that would be the guys and gals that would come out and audit your tax returns. They had the collection division, which was comprised of all the revenue officers, like my good friend John Turner. And they would be the ones to seize your bank account, put a lien on your home, or put a lien there with the county and sap up all your equity. And then there was the division that most people didn't encounter, and that was the Criminal Investigation Division. And those are the guys and gals that carried guns and handcuffs and, went out and really rocked people's worlds. So this division called me because I had applied for it, courtesy of some advice I got from Mr. Guarini, and asked me if I'd be interested in a position as a special agent with the San Francisco office. And as I said, my heart was set on the FBI, but the FBI wasn't panning out. I was qualified, but they just weren't hiring. So I kind of talked myself into, I learned that the IRS, they don't just investigate just tax issues. They investigate money laundering type investigations. They work with a lot of different federal agencies, and there's plenty of those. So it kind of grew on me. I kind of thought, well, maybe this is something that I could do. I was a little concerned about being pigeonholed because I was a CPA, and I thought, they're going to just sit me at a desk with boxes and papers, and I'm never going to get a chance to shoot this gun and have any fun. So I was a little worried, but because I was a CPA, so I had a pretty boring life. And I also concerned that, I didn't have that many friends as it was. And here I'm going to go work for the IRS. Things looked a little bleak, but there was a number of other people I was competing with, and I was selected, offered the job, basically. So I was hired in November of 1993. And I'll never forget that day because, two real big things happened The first was that I was sworn in. And normally with the IRS, at least when I've talked to other current and former IRS people, they get sworn in, there'll be like 20, 30, 40 people, raise your hand, they say the oath, and then they just go about their business. It's not really a big deal. For me, I was taken over to the Oakland Federal Building, this big Taj Mahal, if you've ever seen it, and I was sworn in by myself with the chief there and the American flag and my wife and my older son, my younger son at the time couldn't make it, just too small. So it was really meaningful. My mother was there, my youngest brother, who's now a San Jose police officer. Just a very meaningful moment for me, and it's because I was able to swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, the other thing that was interesting about that time was that when I first started, as normally the case when you start a job, I had nothing to do. And I guess that doesn't seem to bother some people that work for the government, but it bothered me, even on my first day. So I was sitting in my cubicle with no cases or anything, but I had a copy of the Internal Revenue Code. And as most people have probably seen the Internal Revenue Code, how thick it is. So I open it up, and I open up to the 7000 series, where all the criminal statutes are. I thought, well, I'll just look at these criminal statutes that I'm going to be enforcing. Didn't that seem like a smart thing to do for the first day? Well, my boss didn't think so. He came over to me, and I'm sitting down, and he's up here standing, and he's like, he's a former Marine, What are you doing? Well, I'm looking at the Internal Revenue Code, the statutes that we're going to be investigating. He goes, shut that book. You're not a CPA anymore. You're an IRS Special Agent. And he asked me to close the book and not look at the laws, the actual laws that were in the book. So, talk about culture shock, because being a CPA, that's what we did. We researched, we looked into things, we tried to find out what the law was, what the requirements were, and sail the client through it. But apparently at the IRS, you're not supposed to look in that book. So that kind of gave me the shivers. But after that, I didn't have to go looking in the book every day, fortunately. I was able to begin doing investigations, and I was what they call a hard charger. I was very interested in the job and getting my own cases. If you didn't get your own cases, they'd be assigned to you, basically. And so I wanted to choose the cases that I worked on. I worked on some really complex investigations, money laundering, tax investigations. I worked with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the DEA, the Customs Service, the Secret Service, the list goes on and on. I really, really liked the job for about the first 3 years. I guess the thing that concerned me, I kind of lost my train of thought. The job for 3 years. I guess I'm trying to remember that time when I liked the job. I guess it's there's different times in your life when you. I don't know, like when you think there's a Santa Claus, and it's like a simple time in your life, and that's why I kind of hesitated there, because there was that time, that 3 years, when I just thought I was on cloud nine, because I was doing a job that I really liked. I thought I was serving my country, protecting the Treasury, shooting guns a lot, and training, and just really neat stuff. And so after this 3 years went by, there's this point when things kind of took a turn. And I can't say it took a turn for the worse, because I was enlightened. What happened was, it was December of 1996, December of 1996. And I was listening to a talk radio show. The station's still up there, but the host isn't. I wonder why. KSFO was the station, and the host was a gentleman named Jeff Metcalf. And I say was just because he's no longer with KSFO. He's still among the living. Very great man. And I used to listen to his show because he was, not Republican or Democrat, liberal, conservative. He just was really about truth and the Constitution. And that really appealed to me. And I know it might make you think, like, well, why would some guy at the IRS care about those things? And, well, I was kind of an odd duck, I guess you could say, in the IRS, but I came to learn that over a period of time. But I liked what he talked about, Constitution, truth. And then he had a lady on his show one day. Her name was DV Kid. And actually her website is devvy.com. DV Kid, I think she's spoken here before. So DV was talking about the federal income tax, the Federal Reserve, and saying these just outrageous things. At least they sounded outrageous to me at the time. That the income tax was voluntary and that the 16th Amendment had never been ratified and that the Federal Reserve, prints money out of nothing and all those kinds of topics. And that just blew me away to hear this on Jeff Metcalf's show. Because, here I was listening to him for a year or two, and I'm, this high-powered criminal investigator, right? So I'm able to tell if you're lying to me or not. And so I thought I could tell that Jeff was a truthful guy, but how can he be truthful if he would have a woman come on the show and say these things about the income tax? Something's wrong here. So what I did was she offered a address in Colorado where you could send for a couple of her booklets. And so, me being the intrepid investigator, I went and sent away for those booklets. And I got them a few weeks later, and I read them cover to cover. And have anybody ever seen these booklets that DV Kid had? I mean, I think she's printed 1 million of them, and so there's lots of people in the audience that have seen them. Just fascinating stuff, but they're just booklets. I mean, it could all be BS, or it could all be true. Initially, I thought this can't be true. But the interesting thing about these booklets is that it gave addresses, phone numbers, lots of facts, lots of references to actual documents. And, from a criminal investigator standpoint, those are the kinds of things you love, because those are what they call leads. Leads to further information. And I have to say that when I ordered these booklets, my mindset was, I've never considered myself an arrogant person, but I guess I did think this just can't be true. I mean, I talked a few times now about the gun I used to carry, and I mean, it's like, well, I've got this gun and these handcuffs and this bulletproof vest, and they taught me how to shoot a shotgun and drive this car, evasive maneuvers, and this woman's talking about something that would kind of take the wind out of all those sails. It doesn't have the same meaning. It can't be true. So I began to investigate these claims that she made about the income tax, that was limited in scope. The 16th Amendment had never been ratified. There's Fifth Amendment concerns when you sign your name to these tax returns. And I have to say, a lot of these issues I had gone through 4 years at San Jose State, studied for the CPA examination, and had the training that the IRS gives you, and didn't learn these things about the Federal Reserve, about the income tax that they taught us was about deductions, things that you might talk to your CPA about, but never about whether or not you owe the tax, whether or not you're required to file a return, those kinds of things. So these were new areas for me to look into, and I did. But I have to say, I didn't think it would take long to check this out because, hey, this must be BS. But then that means Jeff Metcalf is BS, and that means I'm not a very good investigator because he's BS and I didn't recognize it. So I went ahead and checked, and it took me, a long, long time because, at that time I was, I'm still married with 2 kids, but the boys were younger, and I was a soccer coach, and special agents at that time, and I think they still do, they work 50-hour work weeks as opposed to the other divisions of the IRS that work 40-hour work weeks. We had a 10-hour premium of overtime that was just mandatory. So we would work 50 hours a week. So, it was a fairly long work day, and I tended to work more than the 50 hours without pay because I liked the job. So after all that was said and done, and I had the time I could take to read DV Kids booklets and then start to investigate these different people and documents that she spoke about in her booklets. And there was a person in there named Bill Conklin in the book, a person named Bill Benson, who you've heard mentioned here tonight. And so I just decided that I was going to start calling some of these people and asking them, what gives? What's this all about? And, DV put their phone numbers right in the book. And I thought, well, these phone numbers are probably bogus. I'll call the number and it'll be disconnected. And, so, when I called Bill Benson's phone number and he answers, I'm like, what do I say, So, typical me, I guess I had to become a Fed as opposed to a criminal because I can't lie. I just said, "Hi, Bill. My name is Joe Banister, and I'm a special agent with the IRS. But I'm not investigating you. I'm just investigating, what you're talking about. This thing about the 16th Amendment. I can't say I believe it, but I'm interested in learning more about it and finding out if you have any evidence to send me." So I'm sure he thought that was a crock. And Jeff confirms that he thought it was a crock because Jeff knew him back then and today. I called Larry B. Kraft at one point. He thought that what I told him was a crock. Everybody thought that I was this undercover agent trying to get at them. I couldn't figure out why that was until later, when I learned what the IRS is really all about. Bill Conklin is kind of a funny little story. I think pretty much all the people I've mentioned, the IRS at the time and for many years had this label that they would put on people, and it was called illegal tax protester. And you didn't really have to do much to earn the title. You could just ask a question, and they'd consider you an illegal tax protester. Well, they did away with that. And IRS didn't like that they did away with it, but they learned that it could possibly be an unconstitutional bill of attainder. And they'd been basically violating people's constitutional rights for decades, and so they quietly changed that. And there's actually a very interesting story about that, but I don't think I have time to tell it right now as to why they changed it. Anyway, I called Bill Conklin and I got into a dialogue with him, and at the time I would go home and take time off of work, vacation time, to make these phone calls, and then they would call back and I'd be at work. But I didn't want to give him my work number because can you just imagine Bill Conklin calling and them saying, Joe Banister, you've got an illegal tax protester on line 2. I'm in this kind of a cloak and dagger type environment where I have to communicate with these people and try to learn what it is they're talking about, but yet I didn't ask permission to do the investigation and look into this. I just did it. I did it on my own time. So what was really getting to me was that I was learning how the IRS would, they had pamphlets and literature, and they would make pronouncements about these illegal tax protesters and the income tax. And I started to see how the IRS was very, they'd use like double talk, and they wouldn't answer questions that were asked. They'd ask other questions, or they'd answer other questions. And yet I compare that with my experiences with talking with these so-called illegal tax protesters, and it was like old home week, They're just like, even though they apparently thought that I was this nasty undercover agent, they were sharing all of their information with me, giving me documents, answering my questions, giving me literature that I didn't ask for, that led me to other interesting findings. And as you probably have encountered yourself just in your own life, I mean, you can tell when somebody is honorable and honest, they're open with you. And these people that I encountered were very open with me, despite the kind of job that I held. Whereas the IRS, whenever they would address these issues, it was very, I don't know, it didn't smell right. Didn't smell right even to me. The probing questions that I would ask them, I was real hard on them, and they'd give me back whatever I wanted and more. And one of the people that I contacted early on was Paymon, and that was actually a referral from Bill Conklin. Bill Conklin said, you should talk to this guy named Paymon. And I'm like, what's a Paymon? I just, even federal agents are paranoid. I'm thinking, what have I done? I've now been referred to the grand poobah of illegal tax protesters, and his name is Paymon. So, Paymon was, we had some little schemes. I mean, like, he would give me tapes that would teach me about how to research law, and I was supposed to, maybe should have learned that when I was studying for the CPA exam. No, they don't teach you that. So he'd make these little tapes, these little audio tapes for me, and he'd put some stupid title on it, like, Oprah's Greatest Hits or something, so that people, if they saw the tape, wouldn't say, illegal tax protester greatest hits or something like that. So if people were rifling through my bags, they wouldn't see that I was secretly listening to tax protester stuff. So I got to make this funny, huh? So at least you guys will stay up. It's getting late. Anyway, one thing that I encountered as far as one of the excuses or reasonings that the IRS would give was that people that came to these conclusions, and shall I just say the conclusions opposite of what the IRS will publicize, that maybe there's something wrong with the income tax system and the way that it's administered. The government likes to say that it's wishful thinking. That, well, you're just one of those cheating, cheap kind of people that doesn't want to pay their fair share. And so that's why you believe in these things. And, the people that I was encountering weren't giving me that vibe. That there was something deeper, that it was about freedom, it was about just getting a fair shake from your government, like seeing that they're actually obeying the laws just like you are. And that's the kind of theme that I kept encountering. So it was about a 2-year period, and it took me a long time. I often joke with my friend John Turner, and I'm assuming that most of you have heard of John Turner. He spent 10 years as a revenue officer with the IRS, and interestingly enough, in 1997, he and I learned about this information at almost exactly the same time. He was working in the Sacramento office and I in the San Jose office. And that he was gone in less than 4 months with his research. And now John was literally, seizing bank accounts and putting liens on homes daily. I mean, he was like in people's faces every day. Whereas I was doing these slow investigations, not because I'm slow, but just because they take 2 and 3 and 4 years to complete. And so John had to resign very early in 1997 after what he found. I continued to chug along and research, investigate, talk with people, and really just kind of do what an investigator does, accumulate information. And I want you to keep that in mind too, about the accumulating of information, because you'll laugh a little later on when I show you a little picture from my album. So after the 2-year period of looking into all this, I came to the conclusion that I didn't expect, which was that there was really something, ugly, deceitful, if not downright illegal, about what the IRS was doing in its administration of the income tax. And it's not a conclusion I expected to come to, but that is, after all my diligent research, absolutely in good faith, that's the conclusion that I reached. And so I had to decide what I was going to do about it. And so the decision I made was that, being that I was actually working for the IRS, that I would approach my supervisors and confront them, in a professional manner, and simply ask them what their opinion about these things were. And again, I'm a naive kind of person. They took the same oath that I did. And some of them, Bob Guarini, the gentleman I mentioned before, we went to the same Catholic church. We were on a finance commission together. These were people that were my friends. And I thought that I could approach them, and not in some belligerent manner, but simply as a fellow law enforcement person who had also taken an oath, to say, look, this is what I have found, this is what I have encountered. Basically, it was just validating what other people had found and accumulated. What do you think about this? So I put together a 95-page report that was summarizing the highlights of some of this information that I encountered, and I enclosed it with a transmittal letter, an explanatory letter, simply saying, look, I've put all of my professional horsepower into this report and into this investigation, and it looks to me like people's rights are being violated and the IRS is possibly breaking the law. So I think that I have a duty to tell you about this, and I'd like a response. And I actually asked that the response would come either from the commissioner of the IRS or from someone that he would designate. I thought that was reasonable. They didn't. My chief called me into his office and said, well, first he looked at me like I had two heads. And he said, are you really serious about this? Meaning serious about submitting my report up the chain of command. And I said, I'm dead serious. And so he complied with my request, and he sent it up the chain. And it wasn't but a day or two longer, I was called back into his office, and he had a very short memorandum. And all this stuff, by the way, is on my website. It's freedomabovefortune.com. And in this memorandum, he said, Joe, what I've written in this memorandum, it's not something that I came up with. It's something that I've been instructed to inform you. And it said that they would not be responding to my report or my inquiries, and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation. And so they also said that they were going to send me home for 1 week to think about what I was supposed to do next. So they didn't fire me. They just kind of sent me home and expected me to, make the next move. So I did, and I went home for a week and had to explain to my wife that the job that I loved so much and all the suffering that I had put her through when I was gone for 16 weeks of training, while she was there with my crying newborn, Ryan, all the suffering that she went through, it's all for naught, because now I've discovered that the income tax system is a scam. And I don't know where I'm going to work, honey, next week. So you can just imagine what the reaction was from my wife. But I called my boss, Bob Guarini, and I said, Bob, I think I'm going to have to resign, because you're not answering my questions, and I can't continue in this position, knowing what I know and knowing that you and the other management there have chosen to not respond to me at all and actually invite me to resign. I really have no choice but to resign. So I came in and I turned in, my gun and my badge and my handcuffs and my pager and the whole bit, and walked out of there. And I actually walked out on my birthday, February 25th, 1999. And interestingly, and Jeff might remember this from all of his 16th Amendment research, the 16th Amendment was proclaimed to be ratified on February 25th, 1913. So even though we who've seen the evidence believe the 16th Amendment to be a fraud, nonetheless, it was proclaimed to be ratified on February 25th, and that also happens to be my birthday, and the day I resigned from the IRS. Go figure. Well, after resigning, I decided that it would be wrong of me, basically, to keep quiet about this. I also was still a paranoid, now I was a paranoid former federal agent, and wondering, what the government's going to do about this guy who had these questions and didn't get his answers. And I began to speak, and actually I believe one of my first, if not my first speech, was with Paymon's conference in 1999 in March. And John Turner, who I mentioned before, actually came and spoke briefly there too about his experiences. I continued to speak and research. The research never stopped. And I did wonder in the back of my mind, what's the IRS think about all this? What are they doing about this? And then people would ask me, is the IRS harassing you? Are they doing anything to you? And I said, well, I don't know. I haven't heard of anything. Haven't heard of anything happening. Well, it turns out that they were doing quite a bit. Quite a bit. They weren't answering my questions because apparently they didn't think I was sincere. They didn't think that my questions were worth answering. I don't know, but they decided they weren't going to admit that I was around, that I was asking these questions. They were just going to monitor me. And actually, I've got my first slide I wanted to show you, just to give you an idea of how they were monitoring me. And I'm sorry, but I'll bet you the people in the back can't see this. But I'll just describe it to you. This is when you do a Freedom of Information Act request. If it's just a little bit of paper, they don't charge you for it. But if you're somebody like me, who they've been spying on quite a bit, the bill for producing the stuff that they've kept on me would cost $6,000. And this was sent to one of the attorneys in the Bernhoff firm named Chris Ertl. I think they sent this in January of this year. Yeah, January 4th of this year. $6,000 just to get the stuff that they were keeping on me. But they didn't have time to answer my questions. But they sure knew I was out there, didn't they? If they could accumulate $6,000 worth of information on me. Well, I don't have a lot of time to describe all the things that they've sent my way over the last 6 and 7 years, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them. The first was this disbarment procedure. The IRS didn't like the way that I was assisting clients with their IRS matters. And they accused me of being disreputable. There's actually, it's a civil violation of some regulations that if you do certain things, you're acting disreputably and you can be disbarred from practicing before the IRS. And the IRS has this little division called the Director of Practice. It's called the Office of Professional Responsibility. And they monitor professionals, attorneys, CPAs, to make sure that they're serving their clients properly. And they also, it's very important to them that they protect the public from disreputable characters like me. And so in furtherance of that mission, they asserted or claimed that I should be disbarred, and they filed a complaint against me seeking to disbar me. And again, I can't really go into a lot of details, but it was an absolute railroad. And I know that there's a lot of people that are on my email list, and they would keep track of what went on. And one of the interesting things about that matter was that again, the IRS asserted both to my attorneys, and actually Mr. Bernhoft was kind of leading the charge during those days when we were fighting this. And the IRS kept, asserting in a very holier than thou type method, that they were protecting the public in doing this. And so we were very surprised when we learned that the place that they wanted to hold the hearing, because fortunately, we live in America where you actually get due process, and so they actually allowed for a hearing to take place. Well, they wanted the hearing to take place on an island in San Francisco Bay. There's a military installation in San Francisco Bay called Coast Guard Island. And that's where they wanted to hold the hearing to determine whether Joe Banister was a disreputable character. And the public, from whom they were trying to protect me from, or them from me, was not allowed to go on the island to watch my hearing. We thought that was kind of strange. If people could come on, they'd have to check their license plates and their driver's licenses and all these, tyrannical type checkpoints. But it turned out they didn't even want the public there at all. And so, fortunately, I didn't have 48 Hours or Fleecing of America come to my aid. I had to just send out an email to my support list, and people started to call and fax the judge and the IRS, complaining that, why are you don't do this to murderers and child molesters, but some CPA who, is apparently, you say done these things, you're going to haul them off to a government installation, and so that was quite an experience to be railroaded, and I came to find out that was just a precursor to an even bigger railroading that they were going to attempt. And I guess apparently I don't have a lot of time even to describe it, but I was indicted in November of 2004 on 3 counts of preparing allegedly false income tax returns and conspiring to defraud the United States of America. And the trial occurred in June of 2005. It was a scorched earth from day one. I mean, these people obviously couldn't stand me, and they wanted to do everything they could to put me in a cage. And even the first day, or when my attorneys, Jeff Dickstein and Robert Bernhoff, were flying out to California, it was learned that the prosecution had filed a motion with the court to prevent Mr. Bernhoft from representing me. So they wanted to take one half of my legal team and get rid of it before the trial even started. So that's how things kind of began. There's actually a lot of other things about the trial that I wanted to tell you about, but I really want to at least leave a few minutes for my attorney, Robert Bernhoff, to say a few things. I would invite you to visit my website at freedomabovefortune.com, and there's a place right in the center of the screen called IRS Lockout Update. And what I've done is I put most all of the documents that have occurred through all this time right on the website. So as long as you have Adobe Acrobat and a decent computer, you can go and look at these documents for yourselves. But I really encourage you to do that. I've always been very open about what I've done, contrary to how the IRS operates. But hope that my wonderful friend and attorney Bob could come up and maybe say a few words about the trial.
Thanks for coming tonight, and a round of applause for Joe Banister, please. And, one of the places you don't want to be is on the wrong side of a V in a federal criminal tax prosecution. Those proceedings are, I think Thomas Hobbes once said about the state of nature, nasty, brutish, and short. They usually don't turn out very well. The government has about a 98% conviction rate in federal criminal tax, which leads to their arrogance at trial. There were some amazing things about the trial. One of the most important things for me was the ability to work with the finest trial attorney in America today, Jeff Dickstein. Extraordinary. And of course, the second was Jeff and I, our job, we have the best job in the world and the worst job in the world. We have the worst job in the world because when we go into court, there's a lot of things going against us. We don't enjoy the same presumptions of innocence for our clients. There's skewed rules. We did get a fair trial from Judge Shub, and we appreciated that. But one of the reasons our job is the best job in the world is because we truly get to represent people who are not guilty under the law. But that carries a terrible price, because for every person like Joe Banister that walks away from a trial with an acquittal, the government has 98 out of 100 more that go to federal prison for long periods of time. And that can be devastating, particularly when your clients are innocent. So what I wanted to do, with Joe's permission, is make a couple of quick comments, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Payman. Americans need to be told about the tax police state in America today. And I'm not being overly rhetorical. I participated in a American Bar Association white collar fraud seminar in San Francisco just about 2 weeks ago. And there, the Deputy Assistant United States Attorney General for Tax, he's one of 6 Deputy Assistant U.S. Attorney Generals, a very high-level policymaker, and he's responsible for tax administration, and he's right below the actual Assistant U.S. Attorney General for Tax. And he was making some comments that were surprised me, stunned me, and stunned my colleague Chris Ertl, who attended with me. One of the things Mr. Buente said is that they are encouraging criminal fraud referrals from the revenue agents and revenue officers. They're actually developing all of their criminal leads at this point from audits and collection actions. Now, I've said for years, and people thought I was just being overwrought, that all tax is criminal. All audits are criminal in nature, and they are. Fifth Amendment protection should apply in all tax inquiries, these supposedly civil inquiries, and every citizen who participates or receives an audit notice or a collection action should be advised of their Fifth Amendment rights. And Mr. Buente confirmed that by indicating that they are strongly encouraging the revenue agents and revenue officers to send those fraud referrals for criminal investigation to CID. So things are not going to get better right now, they're going to get worse. The other thing that stunned myself and everybody else in attendance is that Mr. Buente had the, I don't know whether you call it temerity or gall or ignorance, but he suggested that they're kind of getting sick and tired of these active production immunity privileges that people are tendering in response to summonses. And the government's proposed solution to that is more search warrants. So rather than using the administrative procedures that Congress has prescribed at Section 7602 at CEQA, where a summons is issued to a third-party record keeper or a summons is issued to a target, rather than go through the thorny problems of lawyers coming up with creative arguments as to why those might be unconstitutional or a violation of Powell, the government is going to be pursuing more search. You know, I don't have much to say. It was one of the great privileges of my life to, stand up with Joe at that trial. And I wanted to thank Eldo and his wife up here too, his family. These were some of the people that showed up at the trial and stayed there day after day after day with us. And we really appreciated that. And I know Joe did as well. I want to mention one last thing. There are some ominous signs from the government that the government is looking to take a second crack at Joe in a criminal sense as well. So in addition to his director of practice disbarment, which we're going to be appealing, the California Board of Accountancy wants to revoke his CPA license and a variety of other litigation. There's some ominous signs brewing with respect to the government wanting another crack at him in a criminal sense, so to speak. But, it's important that we keep our symbols alive. And Joe really does symbolize the best in all of us. And so, And I deeply appreciate all of you. Keeping the fires of liberty alive is critical. It's important. Talk to young people out there. Try and teach people about basic things. Reason with them. Be patient. Be political. Fight smart. Fight strategic. Pick your battles. And when you fight, fight to win. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Well, I just found out that I've got a few more minutes. I don't know how that happened, but I'll take it. I would also like to thank, I know that I'm sure there's many people that, sent checks, sent $20 bills, prayed for me, which is absolutely the most important thing. I prayed to Jesus Christ a lot, and he pulled me through. He always does. But I'm glad that I do have a few more minutes, because I do want to show you a couple things. Okay, the first one, and I mean, I just love this Jeff Dickstein to death. I mean, he enjoys his work, and he uses something called a ginsu. We call it our tongue, but he's got a ginsu knife, man, and he uses it. And sometimes he writes mean briefs too, but I mean, he's just incredible. He thinks on his feet, and he thinks quick, and nobody can keep up with him. I needed more time for to prepare for my trial, and it turned out that, this picture proves that I'm a pack rat, but only when it comes to paper. From 1997, when I first started January of 97, when I first started investigating to try to determine, who's telling me the truth here, I started accumulating papers and files. Not because I'm, part of the KGB or doing it for the IRS. It's typical for an investigator to take notes and keep track of things, and so that's what I did. Well, when it came time for, I was fortunate enough that Jeff was available, and I asked him if he'd represent me, and he agreed to. And so one of the first things that we had to do was for him to determine, okay, what's it going to take to represent this guy? And so the first thing, an attorney has to look at, or one of the first things, is how many documents am I going to have to look at? What am I going to have to see that this guy's been doing? Well, this picture is part of Jeff's creative juices flowing. He asked me to send him my stuff, and my stuff was about 17 or 18 boxes of records. That's how much stuff that I had accumulated during my investigation. And so Jeff decided, he needed a reason to ask the judge for more time because my co-defendant, Al Thompson, wanted to adhere or take advantage of his speedy trial rights, which means he wanted to have his trial within 70 days of his indictment. I didn't want that. I wanted time, especially because I knew I had a lot of boxes of stuff that I needed to go through myself and share with my attorney. So Jeff decided, you know what, I'm going to just take a picture of the boxes that Joe Banister sent me and attach it to a motion to the judge to ask for more time. So this is a picture of Jeff in their office in Milwaukee, and my boxes actually are taller than he is. And I think there was 18 to 20 of them. And so poor Jeff, after he took the picture, then he had to start going through them all. So I really put him through hell. Let's see. Okay, the other little tidbit. And I'm sorry, what I can do is I can keep this up for those of you who can stay up long enough. This situation occurred in my trial. Basically, the government the prosecution was looking for any possible, way to show that somehow, I meant to file false forms with the government. And so the best that they could come up with was to ask a former a prosecutor who used to prosecute one of the cases that I investigated when I worked at the IRS. They asked that prosecutor to come and testify about what he and I had discussed while we worked together. And the prosecution apparently thought that if they could show that I didn't discuss all these issues about the income tax with him, that somehow meant that I wasn't sincere about the returns that I prepared and what I attached to the returns. If you can follow what I just said, you're doing better than a lot of people. So this prosecutor's name is Tom DiLeonardo, and he worked for the Department of Justice Tax Division at the time when I knew him when I was working at the IRS. He had since moved to become an assistant United States attorney in New Jersey. So that's where he works now, or back in June of 2005, and that's where he came from to testify. Now, and I hope I'm explaining this correctly in a legal sense, but when somebody from the government's witnesses comes to testify, the government's required to disclose to the defense any written or oral communications that witness has had about or with the defendant. And so Mr. DiLeonardo sent an email to his boss, and that's what this email is. Now, the reason that he sent this email is that long before they decided to prosecute me, I met with Tom DiLeonardo on the outside in the IRS building, outside where I used to work. And this would have been like maybe, I think it was 2001 or 2002. And, well, actually it says on the email. Yeah, 2001. And Tom's remark to me was, Joe, it's really a shame that you decided to start hanging around with all these greedy people. He was accusing me that the reason, he didn't really say what my reason was, but that it was a shame that I was associating with greedy people. That's basically what he considers you to be, and by extension, me. And I said, well, Tom, you got me all wrong, and you have my friends all wrong. We're looking for some answers. We're sincere about it. We believe that we've done our homework, and we're looking for some, people inside the government to answer our questions, and they won't answer them. So I would request from you, since you work for the Department of Justice, to actually find somebody in the DOJ who will answer our questions, will answer my questions. In fact, Tom, if you can't find anyone else, why don't you volunteer and help me to get the answers to my questions, and then you'll find out for sure whether I'm sincere or not. This is a conversation that we actually had. Well, because I asked him to do this, after I saw him, I didn't know what he did, right? Because I never saw him again. He went back to D.C. and went about his business, and I went about mine. Well, because he testified in my trial, again, those communications had to be disclosed to the defense. Well, I'm not sure what the exact rule is, but they disclosed this email to us about 5 minutes before he testified, hoping that maybe we wouldn't notice. Well, I saw a copy of it, and of course it meant more to me than my attorneys, because I couldn't have shared this with them sooner than that because I didn't know it existed. But I read it, and we just realized all of a sudden this was like literally a gift from God. Because what he says in this email, and I hope I'm not going to get feedback by stepping by this speaker, and I hope, this is on my website, by the way, but he wrote the email to his boss, whose name is Ronald Cimino. And Ronald Cimino was the chief prosecutor for the entire western United States for all criminal tax prosecutions. Would you consider that to be a pretty high honcho in the DOJ? Well, Tom, who would be his subordinate, wrote him an email and said, you know, I know this Joe Banister, and he said that he hasn't got his questions answered, and I think we should answer his questions. He says, I believe it would be worthwhile to have someone speak with him from the tax division. Banister has consistently, I can read my own letter, used the fact that the government has not responded to his requests as evidence that his position is correct, and the government is hiding the truth. Clearly, if all it takes is to have a sit-down discussion with him, I believe we should do it. However, I would recommend that only Banister be given an audience. His associates are mostly notorious illegal tax protesters who would most assuredly be disruptive and uncooperative. Now, haven't we seen a lot of that behavior today? I spent many hours working with Banister on the companion case in San Jose. I believe that he would listen to the tax division. If his motives are truly noble and pure, he should be receptive. Because he is currently, ready for this, the most highly publicized member of the illegal tax protester movement, it would serve the government well to show him the error of his views. At the very least, Banister could no longer argue that the government has refused to, quote, show him the law, unquote. Now, Mr. DiLeonardo, under oath, testified that he sent this email to his boss, chief of the entire western United States for criminal tax prosecutions, and he never even got a response. The boss, Mr. Cimino, didn't even say, reply, or reply all, and just say no way, or no, I don't believe, Banister's a crackpot, or nothing. He didn't even respond to the email. And the government was so desperate to find evidence that I was somehow acting in bad faith and trying to break a law, that they thought it was worth having this email being given to us, the defense, in order to get Tom DiLeonardo on the witness stand. And of course, Tom DiLeonardo's testimony, he never said during direct examination that I had done anything wrong in his presence. In fact, he said that I was very competent in my investigations. And then the Ginsu knife came. on cross-examination. And Tom was asked directly about me, about our working relationship, about my good faith, and about this memo, about this email. And they couldn't come up with anything that suggested that I, act in bad faith, that I tend to break laws, that I tend not to care about the law, whatever it might be. Couldn't come up with anything. And as far as I recall from the transcripts, Jeff basically through his questioning got him to admit that I was a pretty good guy. And, I got to tell you, I was fortunate after the trial that 2 of the jurors were willing to be interviewed on camera about their experience. And I actually have copies of that tape, and I've heard that the movie, if you've heard about the movie from Aaron Russo that he's produced, it's called America from Freedom to Fascism. And actually, the website is freedomtofascism.com, I believe. Anyway, these jurors, they said, Joe, we just couldn't understand why all the evidence, which came from the government largely, made you look so good. And I have to say, as Bob said, they may come take another swing at me, but the purpose of being an investigator, and this is common sense too, but this is the way it's done, but it should be common sense to you as well. The purpose of an investigation is to determine whether or not a crime has been committed, and if a crime hasn't been committed, you don't carry it forward to prosecution, right? There's lots of investigations that go on that don't end up in a courtroom because you determine through your investigation that no crime has been committed. Now, if we could get through an entire trial and they couldn't produce evidence that I had conspired with anyone, they couldn't get any witness to even say that anything that I submitted was false. And then Jeff, with his cross-examination, got them to admit that I was a pretty good guy. So, of course, the jury's scratching their head saying, what are we doing here? And
come up with a pre-trial hearing? Did you have one?
the question was about a pre-trial hearing. No. It was a railroad, as it often is, and as Bob said, I was...
Federal criminal prosecutions, you pick a jury and you go to trial.
And Bob just responded that in federal criminal prosecutions, you pick a jury and go to trial. It's just the way it is. And I was fortunate. I had some foresight, and I think through prayer and whatever it might be, to try to prepare myself as best I could. And I was blessed with an acquittal. I believe a deserved acquittal. But there's many people that suffer through these things, and they just have no clue what they're in for. And it's a nasty, nasty thing. It's an ugly, nasty thing. Tyranny is an ugly, nasty thing, and that's what we have. It's what we have, and it's something we got to do something about. But we got to do something. We have to do it smart and wise and patiently. And I believe that, for sure, one thing that I have is patience. I had enough patience to accumulate 18 boxes of documents.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Thanks. But I want to reiterate, I've got evidence now that the government, is going to charge me $6,000 to get the information that they've kept on me. And yet they don't want to answer my questions. They even have a prosecutor who I used to work with saying to his boss, I think he'll listen to us. And they still don't want to talk to me. Doesn't that... I know that means something to this audience, but I would think that any thinking person could see that the guy behind the curtain wants you to just close the curtain and leave the castle. They don't want this exposed. They just want to put me in a cage where other people who really deserve much more respect than me, like Irwin Schiff, people that have given their lives to expose this and to let people know what's going on. And the government doesn't care if you have children, if you're married, if you're elderly, if you're in ill health. They'll do anything to keep the lid on this. And it's sick. It is. But I would just encourage you to educate yourselves and to learn as much as you can about this, but really be patient. Don't make any moves that you might regret later. I've learned a lot of things in the last year or two that I didn't know 2, 3, and 4 years ago. The learning curve is very steep, and it takes a very long time to really get the lay of the land. So it's good to get a network of friends around you and knowledgeable people. Going to events like this is really critical to build a network of support. And if it wasn't for a network of support on earth and up above, I'd be sitting in a cage right now. So it's really, really critical to keep a strong network around you, protection. And it still may not be enough, but as I've heard, like Dave Von Kleist and everybody that's come up here, it takes sacrifice. And it's really not, it's not fun. It's not, what I enjoy is seeing people that really care. And I didn't see that at the IRS. Well, they care. They just care about their pension, their paycheck, and their next promotion. And I don't, there are good people there too. But I think that their priority list is a bit screwed up. And mine was about adhering to my oath, adhering to my moral foundation, speaking the truth, living the truth, and just asking questions and seeking answers. And that's what the trial was about. And I believe that's part of the reason, a big part of the reason that I was acquitted, and that's even what the jury admitted. They said, looked like you were just trying to get your questions answered, and they wouldn't answer you. And a person shouldn't go to jail for that. So, again, I'm very, very thankful to each and every one of you for your support. And I really, it's not a very enjoyable road as far as dealing with my adversary, but being able to meet with and speak with you and know that, we share the same heart, the same desires, and they're not selfish desires. They're really about, as I've heard up here already, about your children, about your family, about your friends. It's really about others. Because if it was just about us, why would you come to these events? Why would you interact? You just figure out your next way to keep to yourself and, keep all your money. In that greedy little way that we all do, right? The way that Tom DiLeonardo thinks. But that's not what it's about. It's about sharing what you know. It's about enlightening your friends about how to have better health, how to have more freedom. And what's selfish about that? Nothing at all. So, thank you very, very much.
Folks, I want to share with you that when Joe won his case, the American Free Press, the largest independent newspaper in America, decided to put the story of Joe's win on the front page of its July 11, 2005 issue that famed IRS whistleblower gets tax fraud acquittal. Jury says Banister guilty of no crime. And this collector issue, there's a few of them left if you're interested. Now, folks, everybody here got passed on the price of freedom that we shared with you. I'd like you, if you could be a little bit more patient with us, allow me to read what it says with you, share it with you. In a small cemetery at Berkeley Plantation, you could stand up or sit down if you, whatever you're comfortable, while I read this. In a small cemetery at Berkeley Plantation, on Virginia's James River, is a tablet with this inscription: by signing the Declaration of Independence, the 56 Americans pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. It was no idle pledge. 9 signers died of wounds during the Revolutionary War. 5 signers were captured or imprisoned. Wives, children were killed, jailed, mistreated, or left penniless. 12 signers' houses were burned to the ground. 17 signers lost everything they owned. No signers defected. Their honor, like their country, remained intact. Did they do it for personal gain? Yes, they made the sacrifice in hopes of acquiring a better life for themselves, their families, and their country. And please turn over the page, and I want to invite you to ask yourself, if you were alive over 220 years ago, what kind of price for freedom would you have been willing to pay for the freedom? Would you have paid the price that these men and women did? Well, we're not there. We're not there right now to answer that question. But I can tell you this, folks, we are here today, and there's always a price to be paid for freedom. Folks, what Joe won was a team cooperative effort, just like the Founding Fathers did. There were people who supported George Washington and his troops. Okay, they provided for the boots, for the guns, for the bullets, for the food rations for the soldiers and the militia to get our freedoms. Nothing has changed, folks. We're in the same place. And if you want to be part of the victory of Joe Banister over the IRS beast and more, and have more of these victories, you can be just as much responsible as Joe Banister, Robert Bernhoff, Jeff Dickstein, his attorneys, okay, and others who were part of this team, and other people who previous to the trial helped pay for the ammunition for this battle, which was won. And you can still be part of that, folks, because as you heard, it took a lot of work, a lot of preparation to have this win. And if you want to be part of that, if you want to be able to say to yourself and your family, hey, I did something I feel good about, this freedom that's in these papers, I was a part of that, it was your efforts that made a difference too, you can still do that. So folks, I want to ask you, you do not need to risk being wounded in a Revolutionary War, being captured or imprisoned. You don't have to have your wife or children get killed or jailed or mistreated or left penniless. You don't need to have your house burned to the ground or lose everything you own. You don't have to risk any of that stuff, folks. None. Are you willing to work for a few hours a week in the comfort of and safety of your home or work to restore freedom for yourself, your family, and your country? That's the question I'm inviting you to ask yourself. And it got to be your own free will, your own choice. And I know many of you in this audience want to be part of a victory. like that of Joe Banister and have more like that to get our country back for each of us and all of us. So therefore, we provide the opportunity for those of you who want to be part of this victory, that if you're willing to give $200 or $200 a month, $1,000 or $100 a month, $5,000 or $500 a month, $25,000 or $2,500 a month, just to figure out, add up, if you make only $10 an hour, 1 hour a week, folks, okay, in 52 weeks, that's $520. Even someone making $10 an hour, 1 hour a week, will add up to over $500 in 1 year. Just that. So if you want to make a difference and be part of this effort, you can do that. Some of you make 10 times that. Some of you make much more than that. It's up to you. Where do you want to be? At the last Freedom Conference we had last year, we were able to help take part and raise funds for this victory because we knew it was going to make a difference. Some of you here at these tables gave generously. Some of you even gave again and again and again. Like Eldo and Vivian Kuchenberg right here sitting next to Joe. They gave again and again and again because they knew this was going to be winning. They want to be part of the winning team, make a difference for our country, and they had the vision that it's going to work, and they want to be part of the team. And they were. And I want to thank you for that, Eldo and Vivian, and many of the rest of you, who I haven't named, who took part of that. So tonight, folks, you have the opportunity to do so. And I told Joe that I'm going to offer a little bonus for anybody who wants to be part of that in a little way. If anybody likes to give $1,000 or more to be part of this victory, I asked Joe to the remaining with about maybe, I think we got 20 of these American Free Presses left. I got everything the American Free Press had on these and of this issue, and that is it. You're not going to find them anyplace else. This is a collector issue now. Okay? You will not find it anywhere. So I asked Joe to sign that for you personally. So if you'd like to do that, I invite you to do it right now. And if you like, you can do it tomorrow as well. So with that, folks, I'd like to thank you all for coming and listening. Tomorrow morning, Pastor Walla Drake at 7:30 will have the morning service. And by 9 o'clock, please be in your seats. We're going to get started sharp. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.